I'm Diana, and you'll hear a very little bit from me later, but in the absence of Dina, who's still trying to join us, then I'll open our time with the karakia. Pai tēnā. Kia ora. Tēnei te mauri ka piki ake ki te rangi e tūnei. He rangi atua, he rangi tipua, he rangi tāwhito. Kia puti, ko te mātauranga. Kia tau, ko te māramatanga. Waia kia tata, purutia kia mau, aumie, uie, tae ki e. Kia ora tātou, over to Tyler and the team.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Tyler tuku ingoa. I am the Auckland Regional Archivist with Archives New Zealand. I have a cat that just keeps trying to get my attention, but we'll just all ignore him. With today's session, we have a few members that have come across from our National Library team, as well as some reoccurring faces from our archives team, as well as some new members. So they'll introduce themselves along the way. According to this hui, we are going to have a quick chat with Di around the He Matapihi no Mua project, and then pass on to our National Library team, who are going to talk about some of the maps and manuscripts related to Wharekauri, and as well as the archives team talking about some of the school holdings that we do have with archives. All questions in the chat, as well as any feedback or information that you'd like to share. Again, we're recording the session so that we're able to share it out further, which we'll be passing over to Di and the trust to be able to share that on your social channels. So with that, I'll pass it back to Di, and then we'll continue forward with our conversations tonight.
Kia ora anō. So some of you will know that this ma'i is part of our He Matapihi no Mua project, which really talks about windows into the past. And one of the things about looking through a window into the past is sometimes the window's blurry, and sometimes we look through the window and we might not like what we see. So I'm just going to reflect for a couple of minutes around some of the things that we're conscious of in relation to our tikanga and the way that we're working with the information that we see and that we receive, so that you can feel some sense of confidence about the ma'i that's being done with our colleagues from the heritage institutions. So the first thing we all acknowledge is that there are wairua and tapu aspects to engaging with whakapapa and with our tupuna kōrero, and those should not be overlooked. So we're taking great care in terms of the way that we interact with materials to make sure that those things are respected. It's also correct that some sources are publicly available, but just because they're publicly available doesn't mean that Ngāti Mutunga or Wharekauri Iwi Trust should be the ones making them public. Does that make sense? So there's lots of information that sits in some of those archives that anyone in the world can access, but that doesn't mean that we should be the ones that are posting it in a public forum. And in our He Matapihi no Mua project to date, we've come across perhaps documents that are public, but then have notes that have been written by wānau that are about things that are quite personal to them. And in that context, we've made the decision not to share those pages. In at least one instance, I'm going back to a wānau to say, here is this information. It's yours. You should be able to see it and have it. But we won't be putting it into any of our published resources or putting it online. So we're taking great care with that. The other thing we find is that sometimes we find out stuff that doesn't agree with what we've been taught or what we've heard before. And we're seeking to work with an approach, I suppose, that I would call e ai ki te kōrero. According to the kōrero I've heard, this is the situation. But accepting that someone else may have heard something different and not seeking to takihi on each other in the way that we engage when we have different aspects or perspectives on things. So that's important. The other thing that I've found is that some of that language of the past can be quite jarring to our hearts and to our ears. So we see kupu like half caste, native. We see some of the ways that our tupuna have interacted with people like Governor Gray and think, eta, why are they writing to him with great aroha, given all the things that he did to alienate our whenua and to imprison our people and all of those things. So sometimes we just have to guard our own heart a little bit when it comes to seeing those things and understand that our tupuna did the best that they could in the circumstances they were in, just as we are, and not apply our present lens to the things that we see. The last one is, and I just did some wakapapa kōrero with some of my own wānau over the weekend, our tupuna changed their names many times for different reasons. Some of that was to do with baptisms. When they got baptised into the hāhi, they may have changed their name. So my tupuna Mirimata became Hariata or Harriet. Another tupuna of mine lots of them became Elizabeth and Wikitoria. Hori, Wiramu. And so often we need to check quite carefully through the different generations as the names repeat, but also as those names change. So those are some of the things that we've been very conscious of as we work through this process, and grateful to our archives team who, even in the course of preparing for this webinar, found some information that was quite whānau sensitive and made the decision to make sure that we didn't put that out into a public domain such as this, because it could be new information to those wānau. Kei te pai? So that's just my little koho, I suppose, for tonight around some of the thinking that we're doing as we interact with materials. Kia ora.
Kia ora dai. So I'm going to pass it over to Igor and Rebecca from National Library next.
Kia ora Tyler, kia ora koutou. I'm going to jump in ahead of my colleague Igor. Ko waio, ko Rebecca Clements tōku ingoa. I work at the Alexander Turnbull Library, which is like a mini library inside the National Library. And we hold heritage materials that tend to be unpublished. And one of those items I'm really happy to be here to talk with you about tonight. He taonga tēnei, it's a really beautiful book. I'm going to first share my screen, so just bear with as let's hope technology is on our side this time. Maybe this is where the fun begins. Can you guys all see my screen? And it should say Te Pukapuka o Te Kura Kairako, and not have any of my notes on it. Kei te pai? Okay. So yeah, I work with the manuscripts collection, which can include anything from letters, diaries, books that have not been published, all sorts of good stuff. And this particular book, which I have just called Te Pukapuka o Te Kura Kairako, is, and we also, I've included our catalogue record title, which is called The Chatham Island by Pupils of Te Kairako School in the Chatham Island, 1939. And it sits within the National Library of New Zealand collection. And then, as is our habit, we have given it a unique number, which is that MSZ 1385. And it sits within a group of papers that was donated by the Fairbrother whānau in 2005. And that, again, we've called that MS, which means manuscript group 1333. So, and before I go any further, I just want to say thank you very much for having me. And I hope that this is the beginning of lots of conversations. And I'm going to show you some pictures of this book, talk a little bit about accessing our collections, and then tell you how to get in touch with us. So now I hope that you're seeing my next slide. So this puka was made by pupils at Kairako School, and their teacher, their head teacher at the time, was Basil Fairbrother, and I think his wife Mavis was also quite involved in the school. And around this time, I think he was an enthusiast for history and stories of the island, and he corralled the children all to write this series of essays and do these beautiful illustrations all about the island. And it actually, they entered it into the centennial competition of 1940. So about 55 schools from around the country entered this competition, and they entered this book, and they actually won the primary school category, which isn't too bad because they didn't quite finish it because they had a sailing to catch. So the ship left 6 weeks before the entries closed. So, but still, it's stunning enough to have won first place joint with Wellington Technical College, which is a high school. And you'll see that it includes some stories about the social, cultural, and natural history of Wharekauri. So these are a couple of photos that I just took recently to give you an idea about the sort of size of the book and how we take care of it. So after the book was entered into the centennial competition, won all the prizes, Basil Fairbrother brought it back to the Chathams, and with the intention of completing it. He then moved back with his family to New Zealand to take up another teaching position, and he took the book with him. And very luckily, he travelled with it in his personal belongings, because most of his other belongings were on board the Holmwood, which was sunk. So he lost a lot of his possessions, but the book made it back. And he still intended on working on it, but unfortunately he passed away and nothing more was done with the book. And the Fairbrother family has looked after the book for about 66 years, and then they donated it to the National Library. So when we open up the book, we see that it is filled with beautiful handwriting, and there's lots of illustrations. It starts with this foreword, which is written by Fairbrother, and it gives the context for the creation of the book. And it's about 3 pages long, but in it he also acknowledges the debt that he owes to many of the residents. And while all of the school children are doing the mahi, there was a lot of conversations that were happening with the grown-ups in their lives about the history and the environment of the island. I just think the pages are a beautiful thick paper, and the cover is made out of leather, and this would all have been bound, I think it was bound together by Mavis Fairbrother, but all made on the island. I wanted to show you these 2 pages in particular. As you can see, there's the Kairako School roll of 1939, which lists all of the students that attended the school at this time. And I'm just sure that there will be a lot of familiar names there. So it starts in I'm guessing it's still standards. I'm old enough to remember standard 1, standard 2 and standard 3, and then form 2. And then also I've included the contents page. So it's very much like a published book. You know, they've really, it's quite, it's impeccable the way that they put it together, but that will give you an idea of some of the subjects that the book covers. And you will all know much more about that than I do.
So if you see us leaning forward, Rebecca, it's just we're getting our noses really close to the screen to read those names.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah, I don't want to rush and just overwhelm you because there's lots of words, but there are pictures coming. But I just thought, man, if this was my family, I would definitely be like, who's involved here? So, and I'm very happy to answer any questions, or we can go back. So the entire book has been digitized. So each page has been photographed and is available online. So you all can have a good look at it. But I wanted to show you, just as you're paging through the book, what it looks like. I had ideas of doing video, but yeah, technology is definitely not my friend. So you can see the book is, you know, there's a page around each, a frame around each page. There's beautiful subheadings and beautiful handwriting, and it covers the major events of the island, including Te Kote being on the island. And it says here, this illustration, now I've got to lean in, ho ho prisoners at work. And that is a watercolor illustration. It also covers the history of the church on the island. It's sort of funny, I've taken these pages, you can save pages from the book, and I've saved them and put them together. That's why there's that sort of strange little bit in the middle. But it's nice and clear, and you can definitely zoom in, and it's all legible online. The book finishes with a section on the natural environment of the island. So the plants of the clears, and in the foreword, Basil Fairbrother talks about how the tamariki went out and gathered plants from a 2-mile radius around the school, and they've come back and they've done these beautiful botanical drawings. And they talked about the plants of the clears, which is a word that is unfamiliar to me, so I'm quite intrigued by, but plants of the coast, plants of the field, and they were working on a section of plants of the bush. So in here, and you can also see beside this title page, there's a graph showing the temperature at 9 AM on Chatham Island in 1938. So there's this environmental information that's also been recorded, and the tamariki have made graphs, which I think could be quite interesting as we get, you know, more and more aware of our weather patterns. Although maybe, yeah, living on an island, maybe you're always aware. So let's go to the next page. Yeah, this is beautiful. I got intrigued by this drawing because, and I think it's numbered 36. So it's Microtus unifolia, and it says at the end that it was growing at the bottom. There's a bulb that was often eaten by children. Now, within the book, there are 220 illustrations, including maps, watercolors, and pen and ink drawings of things like the first schoolhouses, the first car, historical events. There's also all the graphs that I mentioned just before, but they're also beautifully all signed or initialed, so you can tell who did them. So we've got AJ down here and A Jacobs. And I was looking at my notes, Te Media Kate Wills Johnson book, The People of the Chathams, and she talks about this book in her writing, and she says that most of the illustrations were done by, and I quote, the extremely talented Adrienne, daughter of Archie and Mary Tero Jacobs, and Ellie, daughter of Dick and Mina Rua. So we've got some serious artists on our hands here, but all of the kids contributed. So I hope that gives you an idea about the contents of the book, and hopefully maybe sparks your curiosity to have a look yourself. And now I wasn't sure how cooperative our internet would be, so I thought I'd do some screenshots of our databases. Tyler, you give me a wave with my time if I'm going over, eh? If you Google the National Library, this is where you'll arrive. So this is our front door online. And as you can see, there's a lot of content here. You could spend days having a look around here. And that would be a good use of time. So you can see here at the very top, though, you can search our collection straight away. And that could be as simple as putting in Wharekauri or Chathams or any other, or a surname, my surname, Clements. You could put botanical drawings. So you could practice doing that, and you can choose to search across all of our collections, so the National Library and the Turnbull Library, so published books, published music, oral histories, maps, manuscripts, photographs, maps. Have I mentioned maps? Yeah. So, and that will bring up a whole load of results. So that's one place, and that's www.netlib.govt.nz. You guys might already know about that. I just wanted to show you. And I've mentioned that, so I work at the Alexander Turnbull Library, so it's a little library within the National Library, and we have our own database that concentrates just on the unpublished collections, and it's a really good place to, it's also a good place to have a look. And again, you've got a keyword search that you can do, but you can also you can search for people, places, iwi hapu. I think this is materials. So that's a good place to also go exploring. And you'll find when you go into the National Library catalogue that you'll end up here anyway. So there are sort of a number of catalogues that are all talking to each other. And finally, I want to show you, so this is NDHA, or National Digital Heritage Archive, and this is where the digital copy of the Pukapuka Kairako sits. And it's an interface I think it's worth maybe going through together, but each of these pages, as you can see on the left-hand side, there's this menu, and basically each of these is one page, and you can scroll through. You can just click through and look at them, and you can zoom in and out, and you can save them. It's not as intuitive or as easygoing as it could be. Sometimes things are going all around, but it definitely rewards just a little bit of patience. It can take a while to load up and all of that. Yeah. So, and just finally, I wanted to say we have a wonderful team of research librarians. Tyler, are you waving at me? You're patting your cat. Who are ready to answer research inquiries. We have subject specialists in a range of areas, and a really diverse range of knowledge. We can talk to you about making copies of materials, helping you with research, how to go about things. And as you go through the National Library catalogue, there'll be lots of buttons that you come across that say ask a librarian, ask a librarian. So, and that will all lead you to this online form. And you just say, help, I'm just looking for things about, you know, why can't I think of anything? Daisies that are edible or something. So I really encourage you, please to get in touch, and it's a wonderful service. Staff use this service because it can be overwhelming. There's a lot in our collections.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. We'll jump to Igor to have a bit of a kōrero around the maps, and we've got a few questions in the chat that we can come back to.
Ka pai. Thank you. Kia ora. And I will stop sharing. Here we go.
Kia ora, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you tonight, and it is my first contact with Chatham Islands in a human way, I guess. I looked at the maps of Chatham Islands for a long time and am fascinated with the history of the islands, and had a privilege to talk with Jocelyn Powell, and perhaps some of you know her. She's quite involved with, I understand, with setting up the museum there. And I met her when I still worked at the University of Auckland in library there. And she came and talked to me about maps. And this is what actually prompted me to look at the maps of Chatham Islands with a bit more focus on it and more attention. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some maps that actually the idea was prompted by you and your desire to look at the map produced by Percy Smith and John Robertson. And so I'd like to talk to you about this map, and also actually several maps that were produced at the time. And the very first map by Percy Smith from 1868. And I'll probably finish off with some interesting, hopefully interesting information in the mid-20s. So if you don't mind, I also like to share the screen. I need to rely on internet on that, so I hope that everything will work fine. At some point, I will also stop sharing the screen and share the screen again, because I need to change the application that I'm going to use, and I'm not quite sure how to do it without sharing the screen twice. So bear with me. So I hope that you see now the viewer from the National Digital Heritage Archive, which already was mentioned by Rebecca. And this is the map of Chatham Islands from 1868, produced by Percy Smith, who visited the island in 1968. So this is surveyed by S.P. Smith, 1868. He actually was there almost a year, and he left the island in 1869 and came back to the mainland. And I believe that that was the first pretty much map produced by him of Chatham Islands, and perhaps the first map that actually provides some information about the modern techniques, surveying techniques of mapping such features like land, islands, and terrain. This map is quite rudimentary. It's doesn't have much information. There is obviously a number of geographic names, both names in Maori, in Moriori, as well as English names. And obviously the most prominent ones are the English names, as you can easily see. This map was actually very important because it, as I mentioned, it it was the predecessor of the modern maps of Chatham Islands. And so I'd like to move to the next map that I'd like to show you. It's that one here. Now, this map is something that you mentioned already in your request to perhaps have a look at this map. And this is from surveys by S.P. Smith and John Robertson. So you have already seen the map from 1868. And I actually spent a little bit of time trying to investigate what was the contribution of John Robertson. So I know that John Robertson visited Chatham Islands in 1883, but I am actually not sure whether he was such a type of surveyor like Percy Smith. So Percy Smith was a terrestrial surveyor, so mainly to do with mapping and surveying areas of land. One John Robertson seems to me, and this is a note from the appendices to the House, to the journals of the House of Representatives, he was more interested in surveying roads. So he was a surveyor, but with very narrow focus on roading. This is my understanding. I could be wrong. So I haven't actually managed to establish more on John Robertson. This map is from 1887, so 3 years after Robertson came back, and it actually shows pretty much very similar information to what the initial map from 68 was, but enhanced. And these enhancements include the show of the relief by haching. Haching is a method of representing third dimension by a series of strokes, lines of various thickness. The thicker the line, the steeper the slope. The thinner the line, the more gentle the slope. So this is the idea behind it. It is invented by German cartographer towards the end of the 18th century. I think 1799 was the Lehmann's map using this technique. It was quite popular at the time and also in New Zealand. So this map has got more information. As you can see, there is a number of roads. Maybe this is the contribution of John Robertson to this map, and is done. It is actually a published map, so unlike the previous one that I showed you, and has got a number of features represented of it. So here you've got the boundaries of blocks. Obviously very important for the surveyors at the time, and not probably something that corresponds with the way how Moriori or Maori actually managed or responded to using the land and actually living on the land. But this is a very European way of looking at the land, and obviously these boundaries appeared quite quickly in New Zealand when the Europeans arrived. Now, the next map that I'd like to show you, and the last one in this, using this interface, is the map, which is the last map produced and published by Land and Survey from 1919, so January 1919. And this map is very similar to the one that you've seen before. The difference actually is that the haching, which actually are quite a dominant way of representing relief, has been removed in order to actually show more detail. And so you can see that the PT land or some swamps as well marked on this map. So this is some swamp area. But one of the major differences is the increased number of geographic names. So I am zooming into the northeastern part of the Chatham Islands, and you can see how many names here in comparison. I'll just switch to the previous map. So this is the same area on that 1887 map. And now we're switching to 1919. So it's quite a remarkable change. So what I'd like to do is to stop here of using this interface. So I will stop sharing and then I will start sharing again very shortly. Hello again. So this is another part of the presentation to you, and it talks about maybe not manuscript maps, but map annotated maps. So maps that were sort of base maps is printed. However, there is a wealth of information put manually on these maps. This map is probably about 8 times bigger than the one that I just showed you before, or maybe 4 times bigger. I'm just exaggerating here. It's made in 2 parts. You can see a seam line here. It was printed. The left-hand side was printed, and then the right-hand side was printed, and then glued together along pretty much that line here, and that formed a sort of base map for various information. So here we've got European and native lands map. So again, the land is divided into bluish color, which represents the European land, and also to the yellowish one that is representative native land in this case. The map is from 3rd of February 1904, obviously, and it's signed by John Strachan, who later became the Surveyor General of New Zealand. This map has been enhanced probably a couple of years later, and this is it here. And then you've got very similar information, but it's probably much tidier than the previous map. So freehold land shown thus, and this is pretty much European land under the European control. Then we've got the native land and reserved for Maoris. So it is striking to see how much land is actually how the ownership of the land works in the Chatham Islands back in the early 20th century. I am not familiar with the current situation in Chatham Islands of what sort of this percentage is, or where the land belongs to, but this is the case from 1904. What also happened is that you see that this is the map that is very similar to the 1887. So the relief is still shown by the haching, and that's the base map that was produced back then, and the information added manually. Another very interesting thing about this map is that this is the map that has been manually annotated with local names, geographic names. And you can see when I talked about appearance of many geographic names on the 1919 map, actually this is the work that has been done prior to updating it. So all in black is something that was on 1887 map. Everything that is in red has been added, probably probably with help or even by local people of Chatham Island. Unfortunately, there is no information who actually added these names in red, but it is incredible detail or information about various places, the changes to the spellings, some features that probably makes far more sense to you and you are familiar with them in comparison with me. But there is a wealth of local information about the geography of this area, about the names that are used locally. Sadly enough, most of these names are gone from the modern maps, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. So this is the map from a revised map from 1909, So this map actually already show all these maps, has been simplified, so it doesn't have this relief shading shown by, sorry, not this hassuring to show the relief. It's simplified, but in addition to has got all these geographic names with all the changes to the spelling, to various and the labels of various features on the island. I just quickly looked at some of these lakes in this area here in the northern part of, and I understand that this lake is currently known by a different name, or maybe this one, I'm not too sure. But I looked at them and noticed that there are some differences between what is recorded on this name and what is currently on the official names, on the official maps. So this is something that perhaps you might like to look at a bit more closely, looking at these maps that we hold in our collections. This is another story that actually I'd like to share with you. It is a map from, again, the same base map as before. So this is the map with this hassuring again, but it has got information here about a new determination of longitude and latitude lines, on Chatham Islands. And according to this note, actually the Chatham Islands moved by 5 kilometers. And I'm not too sure whether you are aware of it, but the line of latitude in particular used to be going through here. That was the 170, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes, which I didn't know, so I need to zoom in. 176 and 30 degree west. So this is the line that has been measured. This is the new line, and the old line used to go through here for the same value of longitude. That distance is about 4 kilometers. So the new survey that was done in 1924 involved observation of 28 stars and actually measuring their position and doing the geodetic calculations in order to find out precisely the latitude and longitude lines in area of Chatham Islands. Interestingly, the island also moved north a little bit, and this is about 860 meters between this line, which is the 44 degrees south, and the new line of 44 degrees south, which has been again measured by Edward Walsh back in 1924 during probably one of better nights where he could see the stars above him. So this is something that I just checked with some curators at the Alexander Turnbull Library, and no one knew about this situation. And I believe that map has been produced for internal use of Lantern Survey. And interestingly, even the maps published by Soil Bureau in 1959 still showed the latitude and longitude lines in the wrong place. The first map that actually showed it correctly was this map here from 1969 that was produced by Lantern Survey. And here again, we've got that line here that corresponds with 176.30 degrees going through here rather than somewhere there. So this is a testimony to increase accuracy of surveys of the island and also of the mainland, but in this case, obviously focusing on Chatham Islands. So I just thought that maybe it would be nice to share it with you. Now I'm zooming again, 1969 to this corner, and look how few names are there in comparison with the maps that were produced in 1919 or 1909. And this is quite sad that many of these local names disappeared again. And the next map is the current map, topographic map at 50,000, so the most accurate map of New Zealand. And again, many of these names are no longer featuring on this map. Obviously, from the perspective of surveying, cartography, very precise map. From the perspective of recording local names, geographic names used by local people, by you, that information is gone. So not every time what is new is better than what it used to be done before. I'd like to stop here, and hopefully in the question and answer session I can maybe answer some of your responses. But to just completely finish off, here's a map as well with a little note saying, government printer, please reduce to half scale. And that is signed by Maurice Crampton Smith, who was a chief draftsman. The date is 26th of August 1918. And as I mentioned, this map was produced quite large. It was 1.2 meter wide by almost a meter high, and he's just asking to produce the map that will be printed by government printer, and it was a quarter of size of this map. So this is where the information comes from. So another sort of piece of information that some of these maps are quite big, but what you see sometimes is much smaller version of these maps. And these local names that I mentioned before are quite hard to read on the reduced scale. So thank you again for your attention, and I am more than happy to answer any questions you might have. So I'm stopping sharing my screen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. Just as a quick aside, due to the technical difficulties that we had earlier, we have gone over time, but we will finish up with an extra 15 minutes just to run through some of the archives material. If that's okay with the rest of the whānau, thumbs up if all good. If you've got other mahi or dinner to have and all that kind of stuff, then we're still recording, and we'll be able to share this afterwards. So again, thank you to Rebecca and Igor for coming over from National Library, which in Wellington is across the road, but being based in Auckland, thinking they're far away from us at the moment. Where to from here in terms of archives? I guess I'll introduce a little bit around our database. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, and then pass it over to Rosie, who, with our Christchurch team, we're able to locate some of the more detailed records around the Māori schools based on Wharekauri, and then from there we can have our a bit of a Q&A and back and forth with each other before wrapping up our session tonight. So I will as well share a screen. I'm going to move a few things over. So on this landing page, this is what Archives Collection Search looks like at the moment. We originally were on Archway, but we have moved over to Collection Search. With it, it comes with a sign-in. So if you want to create your own profile, you're able to log in and sign in with RealMe. By signing in with RealMe, it will just provide you with the options of being able to inquire around records, as well as put digitization requests in. It should keep you all on the same page, and sometimes we do have technical difficulties because of the new software. We are definitely working on it, but we appreciate everyone's patience while we get through it. There's a whole bunch of how-to guides, as well as if you just want to shortcut it and ask an archivist, similar to where Rebecca mentioned asking a librarian. When searching for the material, you may want to put in any details. It may prompt you with some options, but essentially using a keyword in that search will bring up some material. If it doesn't, unfortunately, we've got those very Eurocentric ways of recording the record information back in the day. So sometimes it came with incorrect spelling, or it came, the record itself was titled in a different way than the way that we think about our research and tupuna names. It will be in there. It's a bit of a detective search sometimes. By searching kairako, it will bring up your results, and you're able to both filter them according to a few different ways, as well as how you view them, which can be in tile format or a bit of a list format. Again, something we're working on to make a little bit more user friendly. So, good old unexpected error right there. Not good for us, but I prepared one earlier. So with that, I'm just going to jump to a different school, with Te One school, and this is kind of the format that you can view these records in, as well as list view. I don't want to tempt the fates with a broken system, but again, with the filter system, you can change up how you see the material, whether you want to locate it to a certain repository, whether there's digital copies available, open access, years, included in series, to there. Again, when selecting your record, it will take you to a further record. So in particular, if you see a thumbnail, you know that there's a digital copy there. Opening up the records will give you the information that we currently have available on our public face. There might be more information on the staff view, and accessing that information is about going through the archivist, depending on really the privacy and open status of the records. Again, you can just see a little bit more information about where these records come from in terms of the agency that created it. If it has the thumbnail there, you can see that it's also got a link there around taking you to the same program that National Library use, where you can see a digital copy of that. Fingers crossed it works. If not, I've got a backup. So again, similar to the software that Igor and Rebecca were able to share, you're able to see the file here, and the zoom functions of it is really high quality, so you're able to get right in there, be able to see the finer details in writing. Another example is of this Māori schools photographs. So this one in particular is Te One school. You'll see on the side here all the other kura that are mentioned in there, as well as the front cover, and some more descriptive information on your right hand side. So this one in particular is from the island, but as we go through more of the records, hopefully we'll be able to uncover more of these photographs, as well as other material related to Wharekauri and the kuras based on Wharekauri. So I will stop sharing there and pass it over to Rosie, who has a bit of a deep dive on some other records. Kia ora.
Thank you, Tyler. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rosie Valentine tōku ingoa. Beaming in from Otatahi for Archives New Zealand, one of the archivists there. And I too am doing a couple of screen shares. Right, so we hold, I guess, 3 streams of school education records. We've got records that have come to us from the public schools themselves, records that have come from Department of Education or Ministry of Education. Then also we have a lot from the Canterbury Education Board. The education boards, they ran between 1877 and 1989, and they all had districts around the country. And the Chatham Island schools were under the Canterbury jurisdiction. Whether it was right from 1877, I haven't yet been able to pin down. So the records we hold from the education boards and the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, generally speaking, there's a more policy administrative type of records. They could be on things like the appointments of teachers, the conveyancing or transportation for pupils to school, a lot on building and maintenance. As far as the records that we get directly from schools or via the Ministry of for closed schools, they of course have a bit more detail on the day-to-day running of a school and a bit more detail on individual pupils. The item that I have here on my screen that this is a register of admission, progress and withdrawal from Wānanga School. This one covers 1898 to 1952. When we have transfers from schools, we've always got fingers crossed for a good run of these registers of admission, progress and withdrawal, because they have great detail on the pupils, date of birth, address, years they obtained standard 4 proficiency, perhaps if what school they came from and their destination after school. So just to scroll down. So in the beginning pages, you have the index, and the names aren't usually crossed out. At the end of this book was a note that it was becoming fragile, which you can see here. And so they were taking out the current students, putting them in a new book. So we think that's why we've got crossed out names there, because you do get that with smaller schools where they can take their time to get through one register. So just getting past the index here. So to have a look at the titles in the columns above, you've got your register number, pupil number, date of admission, name and address of parent or guardian, date of birth, the previous school, the attainments of the various standards, and destination after school. So sorry, I'll get over to the names over there. So this actually is the only register of this type that our office holds for a Wharekauri school. It could be that others haven't survived. It could be flood, fire, or being damaged over time through poor storage, or it could be that if a school closed or merged with another school, that those registers went down the road, as it were, to the school that was going to intake students from that area. But we generally only have these records from closed schools, and if a school is still open, we would hope that they've got the registers still there. Just scrolling down for you to get a good view. So this type of register would generally have a 60-year access restriction. The restrictions we operate under, we get them from the agencies that transfer the records to us. The public primary schools operate under the restrictions set by Ministry of Education. And so we observe those restrictions, and if someone wants access permission, we direct them to the appropriate contact to request access permission. We would also have records that would be restricted 100 years if it's highly sensitive, and it's about 60 years if sensitive. This particular one, through the course of this exercise of preparing for this webinar and digitising this item, we did actually find a couple of notes in the margin, albeit brief, that were of a more sensitive nature than expected. There were a couple of notes of prolonged illnesses, one just a little note that there was social welfare involvement with a particular child. So we have actually changed this access restriction from this particular book to 100 years. And what we've provided to DI is up to 1991. So just go through this again.
Sorry, Rosie, can you just say up to what year again? Because you broke up then when you turned away.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, so what we've got is up to 1921. I mean, to be honest, actually, there were a couple of entries underneath at the bottom of the page that were people admitted to the school in 1922. The index at the start, the starting pages, does cover the whole breadth of the book, though, up to the 1952 admissions, but the index doesn't really have any sensitive information at all.
Yeah. Okay. So just this is one of the sort of things that I referred to at the start, where we think that the information, I haven't seen it because I didn't get provided with it, but where it's information about wānanga involvement with social welfare, or the nature of the illness of someone who may be still may still be living. We didn't think it was appropriate to have that information displayed in a public forum, or provided into public by the Iwi Trust. So hence it's been extended back to the 100 years, and we've still got those years up until 1921 that we're able to look at.
Yeah, correct. Yes. So so this item, in effect, the change of its access restriction isn't yet showing on Collections Search, the site that Tyler just demoed for you, but it will in due course. And when this item is uploaded to our website, it won't actually be viewable online until 2053 because the restrictions observed until the end of the book. I'll just stop sharing and switch to some other material that we digitised recently for our session today. Right, so some other records recently digitised in our office is a selection of photographs taken by the Canterbury Education Board. It looks like they had a big visit to all the schools on the islands to essentially do a building maintenance check, I would think. But they did enjoy the scenery. We've got so, a nice little collection. And just to share a bit of that, we've got the name of the school down the side there. And overall, in our office's collection, we don't have a heck of a lot of photos in comparison to the amount of written records. And among these, there was the odd one where there was people, but mainly they're concentrating on the buildings. but yeah, nice to see these. So these items will be online in due course. Currently, with our new collection search website in its infancy, really, there's a bit of delay on newly digitised items coming online, but these ones will be online in due course. There's no restrictions here, obviously. So. Sorry, trying to zoom in, but not too far. And I think that's the end of that selection of photos that I've got there, and we do have some more coming as well. But yeah, so I hope that provides some insight. We do have good guides on the theme of education and school records on our website as well, and as well as doing keyword searching, you can pull series numbers out of those guides and type them into collection search and have a go at searching with a series if your keywords aren't working out so well. Thank you.
Kia ora, Rosie. Thank you so much for sharing some of the records out of the Christchurch Regional Office. So at this point, it is really the opportunity that if there are any questions that the whānau may have, you're free to unmute yourself and ask with the team here, or pop them into the chat if connections are a bit funny, and we'll do our best to answer them. If you're feeling kapai and that was a lot of information, we can also, kind of take some time and reflect on our session and start to wrap it up as well. So we'll open up the floor. Kia ora.
Everyone in overwhelm. there was a lot. Igor, my question is, if we wanted to have a look, particularly at the map that's got the detailed place names on it, if there were a few people here in New Zealand, for example, and some from the island that came over, who would we organise that through? Because I think those names are of great interest to see that level of detail.
The actually original map is held by the Land and Survey, or currently LINS Map Library. This is a joint facility with the New Zealand Defence Force, and access is restricted. However, we managed to get digital copies of these maps, and we will be able to share them with you. There is no restriction on sharing this information. However, we do not hold the original in our collection. So we only hold the image of the map. And actually, many maps that I showed us, like with this land ownership, is also from the same library. So I think the best would be to contact me directly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good to know that they would be available digitally.
I also had another question for you, Igor, around did the island move or did the measurement system change?
Or both.
You talked about the latitude and longitude.
Thank you, Anahere. Nice meeting you again. We worked together at the University of Auckland for a number of years with Anahere. That's why I'm just making that connection there. Yes, it's obviously the island hasn't moved as a feature, as a geographic feature in the middle of the ocean. However, the thing is that it is due to the better measurements that the line of longitude and latitude has been defined in 1924 at night between, I think, 4th and 5th of March, when the observation of 28 stars were made by Walsh. And this is something that happened more recently. Probably many of you heard about the fact that the GPS, when the Americans made it open to civil services as well, because it was military service before, everything moved by 200 meters. So this is kind of the same story. It's actually not the island moved by the reference system has been better defined in the area of Chatham Islands, and that's where the shift occurred.
Kia ora ngā mihi, Igor. Rebecca, just a query. Di made a mention that she used new tupuna names to help her search, but has there been any mahi done around enhancing some of the records within ATL or National Library around some of the things that our expert researchers may have, and that could be around the different spellings of the different names? Maybe there's incorrect spellings.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Amahira. That work is certainly ongoing. And there is a big project about getting subject headings that relate to Mātauranga Māori added into the database, so that we can search from Te Ao Māori view. So, and also correcting spellings is something that even for this session, when I was looking on our database for things related to Wharekauri or Chatham's, even putting an extra S on the end of Chatham's, which is it's a colloquial way that we refer to that place, that can throw off your search. And I found 80 items instead of, if you put in Chatham Islands, found 150. So it's a really, sometimes databases are not your friends either. Yeah, but that work is certainly happening at the National Library across the country to get Māori subject headings and place names or tika. And I guess I could only also add that if you do see something in a database, and bearing in mind it's any kind of database, is sort of an act of authorship across the years by very many people, please get in touch.
Now, he pātai anō tātou? No,
Looks like
great.
Looks like that might be us. And Dina's joined us, so she'll be able to say our closing karakia. Tyler, can you remind us where our next or our final webinar, the last Tuesday in June, is that right?
Yes, so the last Tuesday in June, and I believe we have one more in July as well.
28th, yeah, 28th, Tuesday the 28th of June. And given we had our little, raru with our sign-in, we'll sort that out before the next time. There's just a pātai about the recording from the first hui. Our wānanga at Archives have kindly provided that to us at the Iwi Trust. We're just working through the the technical side of getting that uploaded into the best place for people to be able to access it. So as soon as we're able to do that, then we'll pānui back out to let you know that first recording is available. So Tyler, there may be some more pānui from you, I'm not sure, but if not, then we'll just hand over to Dina, our chair, who's been able to join us, and she'll say our closing karakia. So she missed out doing our opening.
I think for all of us, I mean, we greatly appreciate, and I mean, we're really thankful to be able to share some of the records that we've got across both institutions. We're definitely grateful for everyone to sticking around for a little bit longer tonight, and you know, my sincere apologies around the technology today. Definitely going to get that one fixed. And yeah, really just looking forward to our next session. If there are any questions, especially any questions for the kaimahi from across National Library and Archives, please feel free to email it through and we'll make sure that it gets to the right place. But thank you again on behalf of all my colleagues here, and as well as all of you for persevering and coming along with us.
Over to you, Dina. You just need to unmute.
Okay, kia ora whānau, how are you all? Diane, to our panel of experts, thank you for taking our whānau through this webinar and sharing some of the wonderful digital archives that that relate to Wharekauri. It's been really good watching it, and look forward to receiving more information, and definitely looking forward to our next hui next month. On that basis, I will lead us all through the kia whakamutunga. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki, ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki Tuarua tapu, ki a ke amene.
Kia ora. Pō mari, everyone.